Third quarter we go. They're trailing by 10. Keep an eye on her and JC Sheldon. Clark trying to back her down.
Clark is okay.
Sheldon, that was Clark, hitting her in the face. Clark is upset about that. Then everybody's upset about that. Marina Mabry comes in. She decks Clark, tempers flaring on both sides.
When Sophie Cunningham grabbed that pen and wrote, "Property of Sophie Cunningham," across JC Sheldon's rookie card, she wasn't just signing autographs. She was exposing the WNBA's most embarrassing secret, that the league's biggest superstar has been systematically abandoned by the very institution that profits from her existence. And the smoking gun? Caitlin Clark's own words when Sophie finally stepped up. Finally, someone. Think about that for a second. The most watched player in WNBA history, the woman who single-handedly dragged women's basketball into mainstream consciousness, had to wait for a teammate to write her protection on someone else's rookie card. What does that tell you about how the WNBA really operates behind closed doors? I'm Jackson Riley, and I've been filtering through the digital noise surrounding this story for weeks. What I found isn't just about Sophie being funny at a fan event. It's about an institutional protection racket that's been failing its most valuable asset, while players like Sophie build million-dollar brands by filling the gaps the league refuses to address. But here's what the other channels won't tell you. This signing incident represents the tip of an iceberg that goes deeper than anyone realizes. We're talking about betting markets, corporate conspiracies, and a league so focused on protecting its image that it forgot to protect its stars. Today, we're connecting the dots that everyone else missed, following the digital breadcrumbs from a simple autograph to a systematic betrayal that's reshaping how women's basketball actually works. And if you think this is just about basketball drama, you're about to discover how wrong you are. Let me start with the foundation that nobody wants to acknowledge. The signing incident didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened because the WNBA created a protection vacuum. While other professional leagues treat their superstars like national treasures, the WNBA has systematically allowed Caitlin Clark to be treated like target practice. Official sources won't tell you this, but if you follow the digital breadcrumbs, a different picture emerges. The pattern isn't random contact or competitive intensity. According to ESPN reporting that Sophie revealed on her podcast, she heard locker room discussions at Phoenix Mercury about showing Caitlin Clark what the W really is: organized targeting, efforts across multiple teams.
Sophie commits a hard foul on JC Sheldon. Again, as JC Sheldon is going up for a layup, Sophie bear hugs her and takes her to the ground. What I will say is Sophie did not grab her and throw her to the ground. She didn't body slam her. She didn't do anything, in my personal opinion. Maybe I'm biased here, but I'm gonna give you guys my straight up honest opinion on this. She bear hugged her, took her to the ground. Yes, it was intentional.
Reading the signals from that game footage, you can see exactly what Sophie was responding to. JC Sheldon's accidental contact that hit Clark in the face wasn't basketball. It was part of a systematic campaign that the WNBA chose to ignore. The temperature of the online conversation suggests this goes far beyond individual rivalries. But the story doesn't end there. While the league was busy looking the other way, Sophie was building something the WNBA never expected: a brand based on doing their job for them. Her social media followers exploded from under 400,000 to over 1.2 million within days of the June incident. Sportico estimates this growth could be worth over $1 million in earning potential. That's not just viral fame. That's the market rewarding someone for filling an institutional gap. Corporate partners like Arby's are literally paying Sophie million-dollar deals for being authentic, while the WNBA fines her $1,500 for telling the truth on her podcast. The math doesn't lie about where the real value is.
What do you guys think? Do you guys think this means anything? Like, obviously, when you get a Sophie Cunningham signed a JC Sheldon card, like, I think we should see that more in sport.
The temperature of the online conversation tells us everything we need to know about institutional priorities. Sophie is literally the first WNBA player to publicly declare what everyone knows. Caitlin Clark is the reason we're talking about this league, and instead of celebrating that honesty, the WNBA fines her while allowing coordinated harassment campaigns to continue. I've been filtering out the noise, and the signals point to something much darker than poor officiating. Okay, now let's get into rumor territory. Nothing is officially confirmed, but the online chatter is too loud to ignore about organized betting markets on WNBA disruption incidents. Over $460,000 was wagered on Polymarket specifically around these targeting situations. That brings us to the inevitable question. If people are literally betting on when Caitlin Clark will be targeted, how is the league not aware of this pattern? The answer is simple. They are aware. They just chose profits over protection until players like Sophie started embarrassing them publicly. Let's break down what Sophie's bear hug really represents in this context. It wasn't random retaliation. It was tactical communication. She saw a pattern of targeting that the refs refused to address, the league refused to acknowledge, and opponents kept exploiting. So she sent a message using the only language the WNBA seems to understand: public embarrassment. The signing incident represents the evolution of that strategy. Instead of just physical responses during games, Sophie realized she could weaponize the very fan events the league uses for marketing. Writing "Property of Sophie Cunningham" on JC Sheldon's rookie card was a masterclass in competitive warfare. But here's what they missed. This wasn't just Sophie being petty. This was a calculated business decision. The clip of her signing that card has generated millions of additional impressions across platforms, expanding her brand reach far beyond traditional WNBA demographics. Pat McAfee's coverage alone brought her enforcer narrative to his massive, male sports audience. The digital detective work reveals something even more interesting. Sophie's enforcer content consistently outperforms her basketball highlights on social media. Videos featuring the Sheldon incident generate 600K plus views, versus standard game clips averaging 50K, 100K views. The market is literally telling us that people care more about protection than production.
Hilarious. It really is. Indiana Fever star takes humorous jab at Caitlin Clark villain. You gotta love an Iowa Hawkeyes wire headline. That's really good. That's JC Sheldon. Congratulations. That's all you're known as. The chick that was mean to Caitlin Clark. That's your legacy. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, you've been traded, and I don't think you're much of a basketball player. Sheldon, who was selected number 5 overall in the 2024 WNBA draft by the Dallas Wings, following 5 seasons at Ohio State, has quickly established herself a very negative opinion for both Hawkeye and Fever fans after her June 17 flagrant one on Clark and her eventually uncalled for knee to the right groin area during the July 15 clash in Boston as a member of the Connecticut Sun. By the way, can you stay with the team? You got selected by Dallas. You're already on your 3rd squad in 18 months.
Here's where the conspiracy gets deeper. While Sophie was building this protection-based brand, the WNBA was simultaneously dealing with what they're calling fan disruptions, organized harassment campaigns involving sex toys being thrown at games. Multiple sources confirm these weren't random incidents, but coordinated efforts by cryptocurrency groups specifically targeting players like Sophie. Reading the signals from these incidents, it becomes clear that Sophie's enforcer role made her a target for these organized harassment campaigns. The league that wouldn't protect Caitlin Clark certainly wasn't going to protect the player who embarrassed them by doing their job. It was Sophie herself who had to speak out about being specifically targeted.
Was to me payback for what was happening the entire game, but she did it in a way that she wasn't going to injure JC. She was just making it known, like, if the refs aren't going to handle it, I will handle it. We'll take care of it, but this is not what you're going to do when you come into our house. It was an intentional foul. It was a hard foul. She brought her down, but with that, you guys, JC Sheldon got up and she was ready to go. So as you guys can see in this video, a whole scuffle breaks out. Sophie and JC are going after it. Both teams are running over, trying to break it up. It kind of goes into the fan section a little bit.
That brings us to JC Sheldon's tragic career trajectory, which perfectly illustrates the WNBA's backwards priorities. Here's a player drafted 5th overall who's been traded 3 times in 18 months. Her basketball resume is mediocre at best, averaging 7.5 points while shooting 41.2% from 3. Yet somehow, her biggest headlines aren't about basketball performance, but about targeting the league's biggest star. The angle nobody's covering is how this represents a complete failure of institutional development. Instead of nurturing young talent, the WNBA has created an environment where role players think they can build their brands by taking shots at superstars. That's not competitive basketball. That's systematic dysfunction. But Sophie saw through this immediately. When she wrote Property of Sophie Cunningham, she wasn't just claiming ownership of a matchup. She was publicly humiliating someone who tried to make their name by targeting Caitlin Clark. That's why the moment resonated so powerfully. It represented accountability in a league that had abandoned it.
The first half, the refs didn't call. Someone should have been thrown out, and the refs did not call it.
Correct. I remember that.
They didn't. And so I was like, all right.
She got full body
shoot,
chested.
by 3 people.
Yeah.
Like 2 people, they're like, oh, it's fine. I'm like, if that was anyone else, I would have been booted out of the game. I know that for sure. I'm a little sassy, but like, so are they.
Your leash is shorter though, because they know.
Literally, I don't even have a leash. I just have a freaking collar and a hand on it. Anyway, so there was like 45 seconds left. The girl stole the ball and I was running back and I was like, we're up. I don't need to foul. And I was like, just let her go. And I was like, all right, like, who cares? Last second, intrusive thoughts. I was like, fuck it.
The payback wasn't random violence. It was calculated team protection. Sophie made it clear that if the refs weren't going to handle targeting, she would. But she did it in a way that sent a message without causing injury. That's tactical intelligence, not dirty play. The entire scuffle that followed was the league's institutional failure finally exploding into public view. Official sources won't tell you this, but if you follow the digital breadcrumbs through Sophie's social media growth, a clear pattern emerges. Every time she stands up for Caitlin Clark, her brand value increases. Corporate partners reward her authenticity, while the WNBA punishes her truth-telling. That contradiction reveals everything about institutional priorities.
She's got all the aura right now, all of it. Got the podcast, and a damn good one. I mean, when's the next podcast drop? News is getting slow. There's got to be at least 3 or 4 good things in every Sophie Cunningham podcast.
Here's the smoking gun that proves institutional abandonment. Sophie's own account of referee double standards during that game. According to her direct testimony, she watched Caitlin get full body checked by 3 people, with officials calling it fine, while knowing she would have been ejected for the same contact. That's not inconsistent officiating. That's systematic bias. The intrusive thoughts Sophie mentioned about her final retaliation weren't random emotion. They were the result of watching institutional protection fail repeatedly while being expected to stay silent. When she decided to act on those thoughts, she was choosing player protection over league politics. But the story doesn't end there. The league's response to Sophie's truth-telling has been to fine her multiple times: $400 for the flagrant foul, $500 for a TikTok criticizing referees, and $1,500 for podcast comments about officiating. These fines represent a significant percentage of her WNBA salary, but they've also created a martyrdom narrative that increases fan support. I've been connecting the dots through Sophie's podcast content, and what emerges is a player who understands the game better than the people running it. Her Show Me Something podcast with West Wilson has generated more controversy and engagement than traditional media appearances because she's building direct fan relationships through unfiltered content.
One of the biggest stars the WNBA's ever
Who's that?
had. Her name rhymes with Schmatlin.
Kirtland?
Yeah. What has that been like, seeing her not only kind of transform a league, but also just be like,
No,
is that fair to say?
not even just the league, but like
The
women's
sport,
basketball as a whole around the world. No, I think it's awesome. I think it's so funny because she's like 22, 23 years old and the whole world is watching her.
The aura Sophie has built represents something the WNBA never anticipated: a player whose brand transcends their basketball statistics. Her podcast generates consistent fines and controversy. Her TikTok about referees went viral, and her Arby's partnership created merchandise that sold out. She's leveraging controlled controversy to build influence the league can't control. That's why the autograph signing was so brilliant. It combined humor, rivalry, and unfiltered competitiveness into a perfect viral moment that builds team culture and fan identity. It wasn't staged or branded. It was pure Sophie, sharp and crystal clear about who she's playing for.
God, I wish we had more teammates, or I wish more teammates of Caitlin Clark would get this fired up when their transcendent superstar, who's now hurt and has missed half the games this year, has been the target, that some of the other players would get a little bit aggressive on behalf of Caitlin Clark. Get in between something. You never, this is in the NBA. Every team in hockey, Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan, these transcendent stars, it's always the goon, the enforcer. In this case, Sophie Cunningham, normally these guys, they're not really putting up numbers. The difference here is Sophie Cunningham is a real basketball player and a hell of a good one.
Sophie's mature perspective on Caitlin's global impact reveals the institutional irony perfectly. Here's a 22-year-old transforming women's basketball worldwide. And instead of protecting that phenomenon, the WNBA has created an environment where teammates have to step up because the league won't. That's institutional malpractice on a historic scale. The broader sex toy incident controversy that Sophie was specifically targeted in represents the logical conclusion of the league's protection failures. When you abandon your responsibility to protect players, organized harassment groups fill that vacuum with coordinated campaigns designed to humiliate and intimidate.
Tossed.
And it was 2-on-1. Yeah, I got tossed.
Did she?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then we're good. But so in a situation like that, does Caitlin come up to you after and say, like, because the internet whole thing was, look at fucking Sophie sticking up for Caitlin, like, this is dope.
But I was.
No, I know you were.
But in the locker room, she goes, I think she was like, finally, finally someone else. I was like, dude, I got you. Like but I think that kind of had our team come together as a whole. And it's like, no, we gotta have it was
awesome.
Yeah, no, it really was though. Like, I feel like everyone was like, we do have to protect each other.
But here's the most damaging revelation: Caitlin Clark's reaction when Sophie finally provided protection. Finally, someone. Those two words expose years of institutional abandonment. The league's biggest asset, the player generating unprecedented attention and revenue, had been waiting for someone to simply do what professional leagues are supposed to do automatically. Though team unity that resulted from Sophie's protective actions proves that players recognize what the league refuses to acknowledge. When Sophie said, "Dude, I got you," she wasn't just talking to Caitlin. She was establishing a standard that the WNBA should have set from day one. That locker room moment where Caitlin expressed gratitude for finally having protection reveals the psychological toll of institutional abandonment. This is a player who's generated more revenue and attention for the WNBA than anyone in history, and she had to wait for a teammate to write her safety on someone else's rookie card. The enforcement economy emerging around Sophie's brand represents a complete market indictment of WNBA institutional failures. Fans are actively rewarding players who protect stars through merchandise purchases, social media engagement, and attendance. Sophie has become the prototype for this new role archetype because the league created the demand through their own negligence. Her crossover appeal extends far beyond basketball demographics. The Pat McAfee amplification brought her enforcer narrative to mainstream sports media. Her Bravo podcast co-host West Wilson bridges sports and reality TV fandoms, and her Arby's partnership demonstrated how personality-driven athletes can outperform traditional basketball metrics in certain markets.
Sophie Cunningham owned JC Sheldon from the same game that Marina Mabrey did the massive body slam into Caitlin Clark on. She still owns JC. She still owns JC Sheldon. And what's great is she's got a great sense of humor about it, and she's not shy about it. I mean, what are they going to do?
The ownership language Sophie uses isn't just sports bravado, it's market positioning. When she says she owns JC Sheldon, she's claiming territory that the WNBA abandoned. That confidence comes from understanding that institutions don't create protection. Players do. The institutional response to Sophie's success reveals everything about WNBA priorities. Instead of celebrating a player who's building million-dollar brands while protecting their biggest asset, they're issuing fines and trying to control her narrative. That backward approach explains why corporate partners are bypassing the league to work directly with authentic personalities. Industry sources suggest Sophie's influence has already changed how teams think about roster construction. The Indiana Fever is now specifically seeking players with edge and personality to complement Caitlin Clark's superstar status, moving away from traditional role player archetypes toward the protection-first model Sophie pioneered. That shift represents a fundamental recognition that the WNBA's institutional approach has failed. When teams start building rosters around protection rather than traditional basketball metrics, it means the league's core function, player safety, has been outsourced to individual personalities willing to risk fines and controversy. The betting. Market implications reveal how far this institutional failure extends. When organized groups are wagering hundreds of thousands on WNBA disruption incidents, it means the league's protection failures have created predictable patterns that financial markets can exploit. That's not competitive sports. That's institutional chaos. Sophie's network extends beyond basketball through strategic relationships with Pat McAfee's mainstream sports media empire, West Wilson's Bravo reality TV audience, Arby's corporate marketing machine, and the Indiana Fever's AI-driven fan engagement system. Each connection amplifies her content to different demographics, building influence the WNBA can't control or monetize. The Fever Nation fan base has organized into Sophie-specific subgroups across platforms, creating coordinated support campaigns when she faces fines or criticism. These groups actively promote her podcast, purchase her merchandise, and create fan content that extends her reach beyond traditional WNBA marketing efforts. That's grassroots brand building that bypasses institutional gatekeepers entirely. But here's what the institutional analysis reveals about future implications. Multiple franchises are reportedly evaluating tough players in trades and signings specifically for protection roles rather than traditional basketball metrics. Sophie's success has created a template that other teams are trying to replicate, fundamentally changing how women's basketball values personality and protection. The podcast ecosystem Sophie has leveraged represents a direct threat to traditional WNBA media control. Players are building unfiltered fan relationships that generate more controversy and engagement than official league content. When Sophie's podcast comments about targeting get more attention than league press conferences, it means the institutional narrative has lost relevance. Corporate partnerships are shifting toward personality-driven athletes rather than just statistical performers, as evidenced by Sophie's success despite modest on-court numbers. Her engagement rates outperform traditional stars in certain demographics because authenticity and protection resonate more than pure basketball metrics. That market shift exposes the WNBA's fundamental misunderstanding of their own product. While the league focuses on basketball purity and institutional control, fans are rewarding personalities who provide emotional security and authentic communication. Sophie's brand success represents everything the WNBA should be cultivating, but consistently undermines through fines and control attempts. The cryptocurrency harassment campaigns targeting Sophie specifically reveal how institutional protection failures create vulnerability to organized bad actors. When leagues abandon their responsibility to protect players, it creates opportunities for coordinated harassment that extends far beyond competitive sports into financial manipulation and intimidation. Sophie's prediction that tensions will escalate when the fever faces the sun again has proven accurate, with increased security and media attention becoming necessary. Her comment that this is going to linger demonstrates superior situational awareness compared to league officials who continue treating these incidents as isolated basketball drama rather than systematic targeting campaigns. The enforcement culture Sophie has established extends beyond individual protection to team identity building. When she said the protective actions had our team come together as a whole, she was describing leadership that the WNBA's institutional approach completely fails to provide. Players are creating the unity and security that leagues should guarantee, automatically. Her influence on betting markets, corporate partnerships, and even WNBA policy discussions represents a multidimensional impact that extends far beyond traditional sports metrics. When a player's personality and protection instincts generate more market value than their basketball statistics, it means institutional priorities are completely backwards. The roster construction philosophy changes Sophie has influenced throughout. The Indiana Fever organization represents institutional adaptation to her success model. Teams are specifically seeking players with edge and personality rather than traditional role players because they've recognized that protection and authenticity generate more value than pure basketball skills. But the institutional resistance to Sophie's success reveals the WNBA's fundamental choice. They can either adapt to the protection-first, personality-driven model she's pioneered, or continue fighting a battle against their own market dynamics. The corporate partnerships, fan engagement, and player development trends all point toward Sophie's approach winning regardless of league preferences. When Sophie signed property of Sophie Cunningham on that rookie card, she wasn't just making a joke. She was declaring independence from an institutional system that had abandoned its core responsibility. That signature represents the moment when player protection became a personal brand rather than a league guarantee. The finally someone moment with Caitlin Clark will go down as one of the most damaging institutional indictments in WNBA history. It proves that the league's biggest revenue generator had been systematically abandoned by the very organization that profits from her existence. That's not a basketball story. That's a business ethics catastrophe. Sophie Cunningham didn't just expose JC Sheldon. She exposed the WNBA's institutional betrayal of Caitlin Clark and created a protection economy that operates independently of league control. Whether the WNBA adapts to this new reality or continues fighting their own success stories will determine the future of women's professional basketball. So, what's your take on this institutional exposure? Have you seen other examples of the WNBA abandoning player protection while players like Sophie build brands on filling those gaps? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. The narrative analysts in this community always bring insights that mainstream coverage misses completely. If this investigation opened your eyes to how deep these institutional failures really go, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're continuing to follow these digital breadcrumbs wherever they lead, and the next revelation might be even more explosive than this one. And make sure to share this with anyone who still thinks the autograph signing was just funny basketball. Drama. When you understand the systematic abandonment and institutional betrayal behind that moment, it becomes clear that Sophie Cunningham isn't just protecting Caitlin Clark. She's exposing the WNBA's most embarrassing secrets, one signature at a time.